George of the jungle, strong as he can be.
George, what are all these different categories of charges here on my settlement statement? I mean, what is all this stuff for? You know, those are great questions, and we're going to discuss more of that in the creditjungle.com today. This is George Anderson, and I'm going to introduce and bring back my good friend Jax Pettey, who's a real estate attorney and president of First Liberty Title. And we're going to talk about just one little section of charges on there that are called endorsements and what they do. So, Jax, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, George. So, endorsements, I think whenever we talk about something that people don't deal with day to day, it's important to, first of all, figure out what it is, and then figure out why. Why is it necessary? Now, as far as costs, endorsements are fairly small if it's a residential transaction, which is what we're going to focus on today. In fact, since the 90s, the price on the three standard endorsements we're going to go over haven't changed. They're still about $55 to $60. And that's for all of them, not a piece. But to understand why we need endorsements, we need to understand that they change insurance coverage. And the reason they're necessary is, if you think of a policy of title insurance as kind of an immovable, unchangeable object, because it's something that's submitted to the state, so each state will have to approve each title insurance company's policy. But once they approve it, you can't go in and, I don't like this part, we'll cross it out, and I'd really like to add this part, so we'll write it in the margin. That just can't be done. So what you have to do is, if you are a lender, you have to request an endorsement to change it. Now, think of it like a bowl of ice cream, right? Every time you're going to get the vanilla ice cream. So if you want something else on top, like nuts or bananas or chocolate on your sundae, you've got to request that. So there are three toppings, if you will, that lenders always like to request on a residential property. The first one is called an ALTA. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as an ALTA, but it's the ALTA 8.1. And that's the American Land Title Association. So the 8.1 endorsement covers environmental protection liens. Now this is important to a lender. Again, these are things that lenders generally request that you end up paying for. Because if there is an environmental issue on the property, the federal government can actually cause the current property owner to solve that issue, to pay for all the expensive cleanup, even if they didn't make the mess. And so you can imagine from a lender's perspective, if they take a property back in foreclosure and all of a sudden they get hit with a $500,000 cleanup bill, that's problematic. So they want to make sure there's coverage for that. The second one is called a CLTA 100, and they're very creative. They give them numbers, but the 100 is the comprehensive endorsement. So it covers things like covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Covenants, conditions, and restrictions tell you what you can or can't do with your land. So if you can't build a back garage, but somebody built a back garage, again, when you just walk up to a house, you can see if there's 4 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, you can see if there's a garage, but maybe you can't tell, if any of those are violations of the covenants, conditions, and restrictions. So the lenders want to make sure they're covered for that. And let me just note, you as an owner can request additional coverages or endorsements as well. In 30 some odd years of doing this, I don't believe I've seen that happen, but it is a possibility. Now on commercial, I'll see it all the time from buyers, but the residential side, people just aren't educated, which is why I think it's so great George is doing these videos to educate you, because knowledge is power. Another one is going to be an encroachment. So an encroachment is, here's your property and the neighbors have built something that goes onto your property. Well, that can be expensive litigation, so the lenders want to make sure they're covered for that. And then finally, easements. Let's say on your property, there's an old ditch easement that goes through. That's not something you're going to see just looking at it. You can't see if there is even piping or something underground. But if your dream is to go and put in a swimming pool, you may not be able to do that. So in another segment, we went over surveys and why you may want one of those. But also, it could be that there is a building on there, but there's an easement underneath it, and the lender doesn't want to be responsible for tearing down that building in the event they take the property back. So that's what the CLTA 100 is. Now the final one that's generally asked for is the CLTA 116. So the 116 is something that has to do with where is the actual property. It's what the location of the land, is the land where we think it is, and also the actual structure on the land. Because what happened is, as technology has advanced, you know, this is where they thought the property lines were, and so they built their house here, they put in a driveway here, but it turns out that now with GPS, where you can measure exactly, it's different than when they used to measure, you know, with rods and chains, you know, because the chain actually can shrink or expand based on the heat or cold that's going on that day. So when they used to measure it, maybe they thought that was the corner it started on, but it turns out the corner was here, so the lot line actually goes right through the living room. And the lender is, you know, could require a survey on every property to make sure that doesn't happen. But in Utah, they don't require surveys on residential properties. So you as a buyer can get one, and that's actually wise in some circumstances. But understand, the lender isn't going to be viewing and doing all of this, so they want to make sure they're covered for those eventualities. And I'll turn the time back over to George, but hopefully that gives you a better understanding and insight into endorsements.
Okay. Well, thanks, Jax. That's, yeah, I mean, like, I see him sitting there and don't always know what it is, but it's good to know. And we're going to continue to add some segments and just some little pieces, because there's quite a bit involved with title insurance. If you're paying for it, it's good to know what you're paying for. And again, this is one of those, an ounce of prevention is way better than a pound of cure. So thanks for coming into thecreditjungle.com today. This is George and Jax. We look forward to helping you with any questions you might have, and have a great day.
Have a wonderful one.